Someone's captioning. You can say.
Good afternoon, everybody. Give us just a few minutes. And we're going to get started.
Staff been given the green light. So, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and call our meeting to order. For those of you that are present, it's for Steve in person. And for those of you that are joining with us virtually, we're glad you're able to do so. We're going to go ahead and get started, and I'll do a quick overview of our agenda. So, we'll proceed as we typically do with partner agency updates. And just as a reminder, those updates are great opportunities for us to continue to learn what's going on in other agencies, but also to coordinate and align our work together. And I think we have been working with each of the partner agencies to really begin to think weekly about how we bring greater coordination at a very extreme sophisticated level to this next level of things. We'll hear from Amy and get her executive director report. We'll also share the progress updates and elevate best practices, which is really quite honestly the joy of the meeting for me, and hearing how what we're doing is actually impacting young children's lives and their families. So I'm looking forward to our presentations today. I also want to take a moment to recognize Joe Berry, who is our newest member to the Early Childhood Advisory Council. Joe is not here with us today, but has been appointed to fill the vacant citizen at large seat that was formerly held by John Roden. He is the executive director of the Public Life Foundation in Owensboro, Kentucky. So we're thrilled to have him now on the group committee as a part of our work. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Stacy so she can do our roll call, please.
Amy Smith.
Here.
Andrea Day.
Here.
Anita Dowd. Beth Borton.
Here.
Brittany Howe.
Here.
Dee Dee Cummings. Dr. Amy Hood.
I'm here.
Dr. Annette Bridges. Dr. Connie White here. Dr. Felicia Cummings Smith.
Here.
Dr. Jason Gilbert.
Present.
Dr. Jason Glass.
Dr. Thomas Williams, policy presenter.
Greta McKenzie. Deputy Secretary Beth Brindley. Sam Fithian.
Here.
Lynn Bakers.
Here.
Paula Goff.
Here.
Representative Kim Banta. Lena Gratz. Here. Scotty Collier. Secretary Eric Friedlander. Secretary Jamie Link. Senator Danny Carroll. Tracy Stemmel,
Here.
Travis Burton. Twyla Burdette
Here.
and Joe Barry.
Good form. Very good. Thank you for prioritizing this meeting, especially at this time. Many of our colleagues are probably tied up with all the legislative activity that's been occurring. And we're thankful for that, but also recognize that we want to recognize their absence. And with that, if we can, I'd like to take a motion for approval of our December meeting minutes. Very
I make
good.
a motion.
And there's a second that's virtual. Who was that?
Twyla Burdette. Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion about the minutes? Okay, seeing none, those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. Just as we get into our work again, I really do appreciate how the team constantly keeps our goals in the front of us, and no matter how our work may ebb and flow or just provide a way of accomplishing what we're trying to do together, I think it's really important that we continue to keep our goals in front of us, and those are here. Focusing on deepening our collaboration and efforts across our communities and across agencies statewide, continuing to engage in quality and continuous improvement so that we indeed make this the best place to raise a young person and for their families to be. And that we focus on deeply preparation for entry into kindergarten. So thank you for always keeping that first and foremost as we think about our collective work together. I'm now going to turn it over to Dr. Thomas to begin our agency update.
So good afternoon, everyone. I am here to provide an agency update with the State Department of Education. So we do have two updates that I'd like to share. One is the GMAP process. So GMAP, which is a grant management application planning process, got over conditions. So this year, well, we will have this system annual. So this is going to want to be the district's submitting information to GMAP application. So this year, we do have a new tab, which is geared towards quality. And as we know, preschool quality is a harsh issue. So this is very important to the State Department as we look to make sure that our classrooms are developmentally appropriate and high quality for our children. So that is a new tab that we're looking at. And we're working very closely with the school readiness. So the school readiness will take this information, look at this information for planning purposes to see how we continue to support districts in regards to quality within districts. Next, I would like to talk around the spotlight. So what we're doing in the Office of Special Education for the is we want to highlight exemplary practices within our office. Special education and also preschool programs, any programs in our office. So if anyone has any districts that they would like to highlight, please contact myself or someone within our office so we can definitely highlight your districts and the practices that you do in the state. Again, we do want to make sure that we are elevating preschool because we know that there's great practices and great things that's going on throughout the state. Are there any questions? I do have one guided question that I would like feedback on. And that is, that question is, what action can Kentucky or the State Department take to support school districts with implementing high quality programs? So what, and we're looking for feedback to see what can we do to implement high quality early learning environments.
You waiting for an answer?
Yeah. Dr. Grayson, you just pointed out. We also,
So just looking at any way, what we can do to increase and support district for quality and respectful.
Well, I think one of the ways the Department of Ed can help would be to strengthen partnerships with licensed childcare programs. When you think about school readiness and just kind of strengthen and I guess be more intentional about supporting licensed childcare centers as they also are trying to prepare their children. And then sometimes they shouldn't children, you know, so.
I see that we have maybe some comments on the chat.
Dr. Hood asked if you could repeat what the question was.
Sure.
He couldn't hear it.
Okay.
Speaking of bear, my,
Okay, so maybe I'll turn to this.
Yeah.
I
don't know.
So the question is what action can Kentucky, or specifically in this context, the Kentucky State Department of Education, take to support school districts with implementing high quality early learning environments and quality? Like, what actions can we take? What can we do to support them?
Respond,
Okay.
give them time to think. So I think one of the most critical needs across the board with both the public and private sector is high quality staff. You know, and that's an issue right now that is front and center when you're talking about quality, because quality in the classrooms begins with quality people. Yes. Really. And right now, I believe the Department of Education can really look, collaborate with EPFD to look at pathways, alternative pathways for both certification, but also for qualifying paraprofessionals. That is not makes it more attractive. And looking at, you know, other incentives. So really convening probably stakeholders to really think through the workforce issue, you know, collaborating with the governor's office and other partners to really look long and hard at the different aspects of the workforce issue. Because to me, quality hinders.
I think that you use attractive. Maybe our field is attractive, it continues to stay attractive. And I can just add on to that, I think that we can also partner, continue to partner. I think that's extremely important as we look at quality, looking at our IEP program to see how we're recruiting those attractive professionals.
we have a response online that they need to build or have trust and relationships with the area's childcare and Head Start programs.
Yeah, sure. I just have a couple of paragraphs.
Sure.
You just said IDG, I don't know what that
IDG.
is. IDG, what's that?
Institutions.
Okay, thank you.
IIG.
And then you said something, I didn't know what it was.
Rena, I'm sorry, that
EPSB? Yes,
EPFD.
Education Professional Standards Board. Okay, very good, thank you so much.
Welcome in. Just know that I appreciate this feedback. I appreciate it very much. It just takes the information, take it back to the team. We'll see how we can definitely elevate and making sure that it's the recommendation.
Thank you. I think one of the wonderings I also had just sitting there, this is a great start to how we wanted to engage and get your feedback and ideas from our partner agency updates. One of the things that I'm wondering about is with the spotlight submissions or best practice spotlights, how we as an advisory council can also be engaged in supporting others to be active and submitting, to the spotlight. And I think that there, you know, we do elevate practices here on a regular basis, but there are many more practices and opportunities for us to, you know, encourage others to elevate those practices through that best practices. So I think elevating practices here, also submission to them makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and ask for the next partner agency update from the Cabinet for Health and Family Services Division of Child Care.
Good afternoon, everybody. I apologize to the people in the room. I'm going to project towards the microphone. That way I make sure everybody hears. Childcare, we are moving right along with all of our initiatives. I want to give a couple shout outs. The Staff Family Childcare Network has been in operation for almost 2 years now, and they held their very first statewide conference specifically focusing on family childcare last weekend. They had over 100 participants. So that is something that we're very proud of, and we hope to continue to see grow. That group has really provided the hands-on technical assistance that family childcare providers need. And family childcare is a huge support, especially in our rural communities that can't stand up large center-based programs. So we really appreciate them. They've also done a lot of work compiling zoning information for all of the counties because it's hit or miss. You can have a $25 fee in one county, drive 10 miles to another county, and it's $500. So that has been an ongoing issue with family childcare. So they have put all that information together. That way we will be able to share that when the opportunity presents itself. That was one of the recommendations from the ECE task force during the interim. So look at that. So we went ahead, pulled the trigger, and started gathering that information. So again, I want to give kudos to that group. We continue to have several grant opportunities available, the Family Child Care Partnership being one. We also opened a new opportunity that actually hit our website yesterday. And it's a community partnership grant, and it's a matching grant up to $100,000. And it is really to incentivize communities as a whole to support a licensed child care program. The governing body will be a nonprofit, a 501c3, but they also are required to partner with 4 community partners. And part of the grant is to educate the local community about the importance of early childhood education and early care and learning. There are going to be 10 of those. The application period will end in May. We have a rubric, and then we'll score those, and hopefully those awards will go out in June. I will be sharing that with this group and GOEC and ask that be pushed out to the regional collaboratives. That way we get the word out about this opportunity. You know, we are looking at sustainability long-term. I am currently working on a report about our spending and what it will look like for us to continue all the initiatives we have started. I'm very excited about the opportunity to continue the professional development scholarships through PDG because we're up to, I think it's 783 awards that we've given out for those scholarships, and that's gone to about 500 individual scholars. So we do see folks that are continuing on this pathway every semester, continuing their education. So I'm very excited about that work. So that's kind of us in a nutshell. Are there any questions here or online?
Andrea, I think I'm wondering, you mentioned about the discrepancies county by county, that report that might be coming out. How soon do you anticipate that? And when will there be an opportunity for you to share that with this sponsor?
Yes, we will. I just need to make it look a little prettier. They did a great job, but I need to share that with some other folks first before I broadcast that, but that has been an issue. I know 2 legislative sessions ago, it was an issue, but it didn't get a lot of traction because there was a lot of anecdotal information. And we were finally able to get the data. And again, kudos to the Family Child Care Network for doing the legwork and compiling it because it was.
Are there any other thoughts or questions? I think it's fantastic to hear how the scholarships too are continuing to bring about opportunities for more scholars. So thank you for sharing that. Let's go, Lynn. If you could share with us the Head Start Collaborative Office update.
Okay, so we have lots of information in the pre-reads that were sent out, so I'm just gonna highlight a few things. I really looked at our preschool development grant and the areas that we're looking at and tried to give information that was connected to each. We are going to hear from Northside Preschool Blended Program that start for the end of today, and they are our current Head Start Public Preschool blended program to get the family engagement, family friendly school certificate. So we're going to hear from them and what that process was like for them. I can say at Head Start, we are working on recruiting more Head Starts to participate in that program with the Kentucky Head Start Association as well. And they were pulled in, and we really looked at that with Richard to make that, to embed the Head Start performance standards and to make sure that everything is covered. We also are looking at expanding, as you all know, our apprenticeships. And so we're working with the Kentucky Head Start Association to recruit Head Starts in that area as well. And one of the things that I really wanted to ask this group is think of ways that you can help us get the word out about that program, because it's such an important part of our work already, and it's a huge part of our preschool development. So just, you know, that's one thing that I really wanted to choose to really think about ways that we can elevate that and get the word out. I'm always surprised when people come up and say, I had no idea there was an apprenticeship program for early childhood. So we really need to do a better job of tutoring our own horn. We also, at the Early Childhood Institute in April, we filled up fast. Really. People are just eager for in-person things right now. And so we filled up really quick. But we are going to have some great partnerships for the first time through that institute. We're partnering with the Department of Education, it's our collaboration office, the Cabinet for Health and Family Services. So super excited about that. And it's going to be relative and relevant for all of those different sectors. So super excited. We're going to have some trauma-informed and inclusion sessions, some home visitation practices. So we're going to have hands at the table. We're going to have prevention at the table, public preschool, Head Start, childcare, family resource centers, public libraries, just anyone and everyone that touches early childhood. And all of those will be really relevant for all of that. And then the Kentucky Head Start Association conference, we overlapped. We were so bummed about it, but we sort of, it was, you know, a hotel issue. But John Mountboy moved the Kentucky Head Start Association conference to December 4th through 6th. So we're able to do that. Celebrate. So that worked out really well in the end. And one thing that we're really excited about highlighting at the Institute too is working with Connect. So that is a part of what we're looking at preschool development grant too. And that's going to be a really great session providing information on how to share those resources. So my call for you is just to think about how we might elevate what we're doing, especially the apprenticeship, so that we can expand that. Any questions? I'll try to count.
I have a question, but I have if you want to comment and give the State Department of Education here is the same. That's what we're I'm excited about this and it's continue partnerships.
It's gonna be a great opportunity. And I think it's gonna be great for discussion from different people that do different things with me, but bring them all together and have them. That's what we're.
I think these partner agency updates are really providing evidence for us of how the coordination is really strengthening across our regions. And this is just through this partnership for the Early Childhood Institute. And the more we ways of showing that we're doing deep collaboration, obviously the better off we are together. So I'm hearing more about that. And then let's not let the call to action come in, like follow on us and that requiring action, okay? Because I heard really clearly that there's a need for more people to know about the program, and I think we can all do a part in those already. Rena?
Yes, can I say something about the inter piece as far as the public system is concerned? I think it would be great to further along that partnership with KDE for the commissioner and the leadership at KDE to really highlight and endorse apprenticeships within the public school systems. And it's again going back to the workforce development piece that we're talking about. You know, there's never been a opportune moment in our history to really push for building capacity, local capacity through the apprenticeship programs, you know, to address the staffing shortages. So.
And they're everywhere. They're in every sector.
Yes,
right?
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And you know, I kind of look at that with public pre-K, the credential, and that's something
Yes.
that you put out with the apprenticeship and, you know, public pre-K teachers, they have to have, you know, that credential. And so just working with that piece, you know, I definitely think it deserves a conversation.
I want to make sure our colleagues on that are participating virtually can also hear and understand the conversation. They seem fine. Great.
Do they have a comment though?
Are there any comments?
Can you
from-
all see those?
Yeah,
We're good.
We're good. Okay. Great. All right. And so now, Paula, if you would share your partner agency update, Part C, early intervention.
All right, thank you. Last but not least, we have in early intervention, just like all of our partner agencies have been working hard at making change occur that is positive and has an impact on the quality of services. One thing that I want to highlight is really actually for our whole division at the Department for Public Health, the maternal and child health, because we now are forming a family advisory committee. First Steps, or KEYS as we now refer to it, has always had a parent consultant as a paid position on staff to help us understand the parent point of view and ensure that what we're putting out to parents and is information and things that really meets their needs, as well as meets their level of understanding and how we explain things. So having this advisory committee is really a big step for our division, and we're very excited about it. The parent consultant for KEYS is the one who's leading that charge, and Karen McCracken. She's a great parent consultant. She has made lots of coordinated efforts and relationships with many of the, formal parent groups, as well as lots of informal communications and relationships with families. And so we're very excited about it. The parents that are targeted and recruiting are not just the families in early intervention, but also families from HANDS, families from some of the other programs within our division, such as WIC, to see if they are interested in stepping up to the plate. On the first day of the information going out and the application going out, Karen received over 80 applications. So I think that speaks loudly of how parents want to be engaged and want to be a partner at the table with us. We also have a couple of work groups that are going strong that really address issues around quality and workforce development. One is our rate restructuring work group. We have a work group of providers, a couple of national technical assistants, working with us to identify how to move the KEYS reimbursement structure from one that is based on the location of services to one that is based on the quality of services. We've dug through a lot of data, a lot of conversations. As you could well imagine, there are a lot of varying opinions, but that work group has really worked well. They've really worked hard. And so we're excited about that. Not only will they give us recommendations on how to restructure our reimbursement, but also to look at what would be indicators of quality, as well as looking at the rates. Rates have not changed since 2011, and so we really want to look at paying for quality, because that's where the money needs to be put. The other thing that really supports quality is our coaching, training, and mentoring program. This is something that we envisioned in 2012. It actually started, it was under a couple of years of development and then rolled out in 2015. And since then, it's a very, very intense coaching course that our providers take. They are required to provide videos that demonstrate that they have met the practices. We have developed a model, which is the Kentucky model of early intervention, that incorporates the best practices in the field around engaging parents and coaching parents to be their child's best teacher, and the competencies for parents to feel really comfortable doing that and working with their child. It is a different role for our providers. Many of them are trained in direct therapy, such as you would see in a rehab or in a freestanding clinic. So changing that practice from being a therapeutic approach to the child to being a coach for the parents and working through parent-mediated interventions has been hard. And as we all know, changing behavior is difficult, takes time. So it has been a longer course. It's not your weekend training. They also have, as part of their maintenance, once they reach fidelity, then they're on a periodic schedule to continue to provide videos that show that they are still maintaining fidelity, so that we can go in and if people stray, because we all know people tend to stray away from practices at times, then we can get some resources into them and help them and keep them on the path until it's really well grained into their practice. So we're really excited about that. We're down to our last region in the state that we'll be working with. And so we're seeing that, and it will continue as we again kind of phase out of that intense teaching everybody about it and getting everybody through to then looking at the maintenance side of it. And then our other exciting news that we have is just looking at what resources do we have that could really help our services reach more children. Kentucky's always had an issue with reaching the birth to one population for a variety of reasons. Sometimes delays aren't going to show up until a child misses the milestone. So you've got to wait for them to get old enough to have normally met that milestone. Our average age of referral is 15 months. We would really like to see that drop. It has dropped some. Used to be 18 months. Now it's down to 15, but we'd really like to get it lower, and we'd like to serve more children. So we're going to hire an outreach coordinator who will work with the local communities through our local offices to develop a comprehensive child find plan that we can then implement and be able to measure and track. What are the activities that really reach to families and get them into the services? what are activities that people do that really is no more than an awareness activity? And really be able to hone in on what are effective child find activities. So we're very excited about bringing that position in to our staff, because I think it's one that should help us tremendously, making sure that we're hitting all the geographic areas and that we're hitting all the people who in fact need our services. Any questions?
Paula, this is Amy Hood. I have a question. Do you know, can you share with us how, if we knew someone that might be good for that family advisory committee, how do people apply for that or get appointed or whatever?
You got two options. They can apply through Karen McCracken. She's karen.mccracken@ky.gov. Or you can send that name to me and I will get it to Karen. Either way, Amy. But we would love to have a rich pool of people for the choices.
Great, thank you.
Paula, I think that was one of the areas where I too shared a question that Amy asked, making sure that there's a rich pool and a diverse pool of families represented. So I really appreciate hearing and learning more about the advisory committee. I know my organization would love to be deep in partnership with you. I also wondered a little bit more about you gave a statistic about birth to 1-year-old population, and that being one of the hardest populations to identify through your child find plan. Or one that you're going to be creating. Can you say a little bit more about strategies that may or may not have been effective that you hope to see updated or changed or revised through the child find plan in the future, and what you might be hopeful for from advisory council that could help support that effort?
What we have found in the over the years are the things that people typically do. There's a lot of awareness activities that happen, like in local health departments, local communities, the baby fairs, the baby showers, those community-wide things, which tend to be more of an awareness level. What we found is when we had our points of entry, they had to develop a child find plan to us that was specific. What doctor's offices are you going to? What OBGYNs are you visiting? Do they know how to make a referral? If you're leaving brochures with them, do you go back to find out if people actually took any of those brochures? Those types of things that have been much more effective to really try to personalize it and customize it than the wide. I come to a fair and there's 30 different, community groups are out there passing out information or passing out giveaways, those types of things. And so, and given that our services really, in a sense are specialized, we reach a niche population. We're not the general population, but we need the general population to help to know about the program so they can help family members and they can help their neighbor and they can help refer people and get them to the right door. So we do want a level of awareness, but we also want to make sure that who are those primary people that are going to make a referral because they really have a strong suspicion a child has a delay. Yeah. And so we do get a lot of referrals from physicians, but we also get we still hear, and this day and age, that the doctor has told the parent, well, they told me to wait. And that happens far too often. And then we get those parents that I think are just, you want the best for your baby. You want your baby to be all that the baby could be. And sometimes that news of, let's see what we can do to help him. We've identified something. That's really hard for a family to take, even though they may have suspicioned it for a while. And so, again, trying to help people figure out how do we support families to take that step.
Thank you so much for elaborating on that and the comments about you know, where parents and families are as they're receiving information and how we have to care for that as well. I guess I was also sitting here kind of thinking about, you know, we've all experienced something together in the last 3 years of a pandemic that is likely going to have some implications for our youngest learners, and how that shows up as we think about the future. I think is something that's just on the top of my mind as well. I see Dr. Bridges also has a question or comment.
Well, I'm just wondering, Paula, what would be the process? I'm thinking about childcare directors who suspect, especially the younger age. What's the best process for that? It gets a little tricky with the parent. So what would you suggest?
Well, I agree with you. It can be very tricky. And I understand a childcare teacher or director that's having that struggle about they see something, but it's not a comfortable conversation many times. And they may not feel confident in how they approach it. You know, technically, according to the law, they could make a referral and not talk to the parent. So then that kind of passes the buck to our staff, who calls the parent and they say, "Where did you get my name?" And you're not starting off on the right foot. We really try to work with people about how do you make that conversation? You know, it's that issue of difficult conversations, because you're doing it because you care for the child and you care for that family and you're wanting the best for them. And so I think sometimes that's not a part of professional development about those hard conversations. And I think it needs to be built in there to help them understand, because the reality often is we perceive it's going to be much worse than it really is. There's many families who will be very grateful that you're either confirming a suspicion they had, or it's something that they want to jump on and find out and see if things are okay. So when people ask us about that, we recommend, you know, talk to the parent first, but you've got to have, probably in childcare, they really have an opportunity to have a good relationship with that parent. You know, they're seeing that parent on a daily basis, and that's going to go a little easier than when it's somebody cold that they don't see very often, and suddenly they make a report, you know, to say, "We think your child needs help."
So now I'm wondering how, what you just said, and see, I didn't know that a director or somebody could make a referral. But how, Andrea, how will directors know that? How can you get the information out to them so they'll know, as I'm sure someone's struggling with that?
You may tell Adrian there.
Oh,
Yeah. You're on target. You wanted to add to this.
Yes, because the Division of Child Care did develop some training of the trainers, specifically around early intervention, how to communicate with parents who have children with special needs. We also recently had a special needs training of the trainer that ran for 12 months. And part of being a part of that academy, if you will, is that those trainers who took all those trainings are obligated to go out and deliver those trainings throughout the state. So that is an area that we have recognized that, you know, our providers are ill-equipped and not comfortable, but what can we do to provide them the information? The TOT, they got the entire presentation. That way they can take it and tweak it for their own needs, but that is something that our department is committed to, and we're going to continue to work on.
Yeah, and we really appreciate that. Some of our staff worked with Andrea's staff on putting that together and reviewing some things and stuff. And that's the step in the right direction. Just people need to know, how do you get that information? And I think helping build people's confidence to have hard conversations, or what they may perceive as a hard conversation, is really a key.
All right, great, thank you. Great discussion. This is exactly what we had hoped for in really engaging your insights and input and demonstrating ways in which we are working closely together and maybe need to touch and strengthen that work together. So thank you. I'm gonna turn it over now to Amy as she shares the executive director report. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna sort of turn this way too. So let me know if you all can't hear me here. Glad to see so many people in person, and gosh, those partner updates were so incredible. I just wrote so many notes, it's gonna be really hard for me to stay focused. But let me just start there and just say, how do I say this? This work and this office, you know, we serve as that umbrella organization, right? We don't provide direct services. It's all about coordination and alignment in births of 5, but also really through that preschool development grant, it's birth to 3rd grade. And so there were so many times I started out with Dr. Williams because he went first. And then as we continued to go, I was like, okay, well, I'll be up here the rest of the meeting, and so that won't work. But I'll build upon where Paula was around the example that she gave around hiring an outreach coordinator and the child find plan. Integrates specifically and intentionally with the preschool development grant and bonus activity with coordinated enrollment. And if we don't take advantage of that wonderful opportunity that Paula just mentioned, shame on us. And I was thinking, Paula, 6 months ago, when we were diving into data with the Data and Shared Accountability Committee, who was that exemplar that we invited to come and talk about child find? Well, it was Hazard, and you helped us identify Hazard. And this person from Hazard has been doing child find incredibly well forever in the Commonwealth, right? And so it's just amazing. And then, Dr. Williams, just quickly on your piece, the exemplar spotlights connects directly with the needs assessment, which we intentionally said, for the first time ever, this office with your all support helps identify, 8 to 10 bright spots, data-driven strategies that work. Well, we know there are more. And so we said, let's identify those. Right? So at any rate, the improving quality, that, question that you asked, well, that connects directly with, the required activity that we asked the Kentucky Department of Education to lead. So it's just, it was so smart, Dr. Cummings, say, let's do it like this, right? So it just shows this overlap and being very intentional in what it is that we're doing through your all's leadership. So I just thank you all so much for continuing to sort of grow with us and think differently to get to different results. It's just really amazing. So that wasn't my executive director report. So I'll try to keep it short because Megan will pull me off the stage if this is a stage. So just as a quick reminder that you all will receive the the full executive director report after the meeting. Lynn provided a lot of information on workforce, but whenever we do an apprenticeship training, we have a great crowd. We did a mentor summit recently, and it was just so great to see that strategic strategy in action, really. So we had the first day, and then the second day it had canceled because of weather. So we're gonna reconvene that The Early Retirement Institute, again, Lynn spoke to that, but just, you know, again, we can't do our work without our outstanding partners. And we just thank the leadership of the Cabinet for Health and Family Services and the Kentucky Department of Education for continuing to help us break down silos. We've been doing the Early Childhood Institute since 2014 or 16. I can't remember, or somewhere along there, a long time.
Yeah.
And this is the very first time we've ever done it in collaboration. Right, so it's a big deal. It's a big deal. So we really appreciate it. Fiscal mapping, I provided an update on that several months ago, but we are able to refresh our fiscal map that we first did Birth to 5 with the preschool planning grants. And our office has a liaison with the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, the Kentucky Department of Education, and Council for Post-Secondary Education. And they are doing an outstanding job. Office of Special Ed and Early Learning has already submitted their data. We've got the federal funding already for Head Start. And just doing great work. We're not having to pay for any of the expertise. We're working with an outside group, and so it's pretty amazing that we're able to do this. And then, you know, later on down the road, we'll have that too. Let's see who's able to do this. This time with the refresh, we're able to include the American Rescue Fund dollars, and it's going to take it all the way out to post-secondary. So it's pretty nice. I'm going to provide a little bit of an update on the preschool development grant in a minute. I think the last couple of things I would say, the Kentucky Regional Collaborative Network continues to just really make some great strides. It is just from where it was 3 years ago to where it is now, working continuously to improve community level results. And right now we've got close to 90% of our counties that are active. And you know, this has a lot to do with Megan's leadership. The team also does a whole lot to engage with the regional collaboratives, but we've also onboarded 2 affiliate counties. I said, Megan, what does that mean? And she said, that means they're working with counties without any money, but they want to learn best practices and they want to figure out how they engage in the request for application process next time. Really amazing. Every time we have a webinar, close to 200 partners participate, and I don't know how many emails Megan gets as a follow-up to say, how do I engage in a regional collaborative? It's pretty amazing. Quickly on a staffing update, want to thank very much a couple of folks who are no longer with us on in our office, Rebecca King and Brenda Hagan. Thank them for their partnership and their leadership. And want to welcome our friend in the back, Kate Van Horn. We had Dr. Sarah Hawkins-Lear from the University of Kentucky reach out and say, hey, I've got some graduate students and they would love to come and observe in your office. And so, Kate, this is the second time she's been here. We hope she's learning a lot. Doesn't think we're too crazy. What else is she going to say, right? And then just wanted to share too that John Rodin has come along for the ride with the preschool development grant. He's working with us a couple days a week to provide some leadership support with the preschool development grant, and we're really thrilled about that. Our team is doing an amazing job, really in I think a lead role with the preschool development grant, but you know, we don't have as much capacity as we need, so we're doing some contracting work. And so you'll hear some and meet some contracted folks. Some are from Kentucky, some are from outside of Kentucky. And I think the last piece that is super, super exciting is let me see, let me get her title right, deputy. Gosh, Michelle DeJohn's the title. Commissioner, Deputy Commissioner Michelle DeJohn. And, he is going to continue to work with us and Marty Hammonds with the Office of Employer and Apprenticeship Services. And, going to share a staff member temporarily with us. And so we're going to have a lot of industry expertise in the area of apprenticeship services. We're thrilled about that. We had a conversation the other day. We're building a plan out for that. And so I think that's going to end up being a really great thing. I believe that's my update. I think last thing is personal development grant. Is we can't begin any work until we have contracts in place. That's the headline. But we do have 2 contracts in place, and we've had 2 meetings with partners. And we've had several conversations with our federal folks. And this team has done amazing work unpacking our application, repackaging it in a way that is, I would say, understandable. It's bite-sized. We have put milestones in place, ways to monitor our progress, and they're all hands on deck. And there's 4 of them sitting there. Our partners have been really great. And I think the last thing I would say is when we met with our federal folks the other day, they really couldn't believe how far along we were. And they said, you know that you're much further along than a lot of states are. So, we've just begun, obviously, but it's going to be an amazing ride, it really is. So happy to take any questions. I may be over time, but still, if you have questions, I'm happy to take them. It's important.
Thank you, Amy, and the rest of the team. I know how challenging it is to get up and running, major body of work, and I will say I have witnessed this team really pull together and provide such amazing technical support already to put Kentucky in a really strong light when moving ahead. So all of us will continue to get regular updates about all of the work, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this is going to transform and continue to support the accelerant work that's already been applied in the state. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. White and the Stellar Group. We have a presentation on the Kentucky Developmental Screening Project. Thanks, Dr. White.
Well, thank you, everyone. And I'm going to try again to speak because I've usually been on that end of the scale. And I know it's so frustrating when people get excited about something and then they start talking softer to the people in front of them and you just can't hear. So I will try to project. Projecting has never been a problem for me. At least my husband says so. I am with the Department of Public Health. I'm by training an OBGYN physician. I tell people I'm a recovering OBGYN physician since I've been in the Department for Public Health. So for me to be doing a talk about developmental screening is a little interesting. The next slide, we're going to talk about developmental screening, but as an OBGYN physician, I did a 1-minute APGAR and a 5-minute APGAR. Then they were somebody else's problem. After 5 minutes, if they didn't have developmental problems, then I was good because it was a pediatrician's problem. But since I've been coming to this group, and I'm so grateful to have been selected to come, what I have found out, and what you already know, is that when kids start behind, they stay behind. And that's, if you think about it, it just makes such great sense. If we look at our numbers in Kentucky, 51% prior to COVID of our kindergarten readiness was where we were, 51%. Well, that's more than half. And we know we can do better. We know we can set these kids up to succeed. And right now they're being set up to fail. And nobody wants that. And that's why this wonderful group of people are together. And that's why we brought the Stellar Group in to help us to operationalize this project. So we know that screening should start in the first year of life and not wait. You said that they've been told they should wait a little while. Waiting is not good. And then developmental screening, as you know, identifies those delays and those concerns and how important that parent engagement. Paula Goff has taught me how important that parent engagement, teaching that their parents to be coaches. I heard a talk on average childhood experiences, and one researcher from Harvard said babies can't pull themselves up by their bootstrap. Those parents, those caregivers are the ones that are going to shepherd them through that. And so getting this developmental monitoring and screening statewide is so critical and so impactful for us as a state. So Kate, who's going to speak here in just a minute from the Stellar Group, wanted me to kind of look at it in a public health lens. And I've told this quote and I've used it. I wish I'd written down the professor. It was a professor at the University of Kentucky talking about public health. And what he said is part of what we do in public health is to imagine what we can do as a society and how we can create the world we want to live in. You can put diabetes in there, you can put heart disease in there, you can put cognitive development in there, you can put a whole host of things in there. But what are we going to do as a society to make the world we want to live in? So by doing the developmental screening and making that a focal point, we looked at developmental screening in our cabinet. The secretary asked me to lead a group on childhood health. And be part of the strategic plan. And that's for the three, and we're on the next slide now. And that's for those three topics of developmental screening, vaccinations, and smoking cessation. I really picked those three things. One reason is because we are pretty bad on that in the state of Kentucky. If you look at the America's Health Rankings, and we thought those were the three things. If the cabinet could really improve those three areas, we would have healthier children. And that's how I learned even more and more about the developmental screening. So we are going through public health transformation right now. In the olden days, in the health department, that's where I got my tetanus shot before I went to church camp. And, the things that the health department used to do are not things they're doing now, because a lot of those activities are being done by outside organizations. And we were trying to reproduce that, spending an awful lot of money and not getting the bang for the buck. So now they're talking here about the key points in public health transformation. Health equity is number one. And that's to ensure that every single family, regardless of where they are in that community, has what they need. You know, if we could do that, we could change the whole world. And we won't change the world until we can get that equity. The communication, making sure we're not doing a diabetes training program, whereas the hospital down the street's doing it, whereas they're doing one at the public library. Let's communicate. Who's doing diabetes training? Okay, let's refer people to a training that's quality, that's already in place, and make sure that we're not using what small resources we have in public health to do things that somebody else is already doing. That communication to make sure we're collaborating, and as Amy was talking about, that's what we've seen grow out of this group. And then that culture of change. This allows public health to now be more that cultural change, the health strategists for the community, the public population health. Those are the kinds of things that we in the public health world can be, and we can create that world that we want to live in. So Kate, are you here with us?
I'm here. How can you hear me? Can you hear me well?
Very good.
Okay, great. All right, so I'll take it from here.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. White, for that fantastic introduction. Developmental screening really is sort of one of these pieces that resonates with that public health transformation with all of those ideas and values. So the project that we've been working on has been an initiative, $8 million of tobacco settlement funds, of excess tobacco settlement funds were sort of designated for developmental screening. So this is just an incredible opportunity to really kind of dive in and make some of these system level changes that people have been talking about and looking for, and kind of from what our research shows, people know exactly what needs to happen to a certain degree. Of course, we need to do a little bit of research, but yeah, it's an exciting opportunity. So the first phase of our research was to really do a landscape snapshot. Just to understand. So we researched and collected data to understand what role developmental screening plays on the current landscape of early childhood services in Kentucky. Then in phase 2, the plan is to use the research to inform the development of a plan for introducing really meaningful supports and enhancements to increase developmental screening. And not only to increase developmental screening, but also to increase the effectiveness of the structure around developmental screening. It's not just about getting screenings completed, but also about connections and referrals and follow-ups and making sure that children and families are ending up where they need to go to get the services they need. So on the one hand, this feels simple, right? But it's not. There are so many intersecting factors that present barriers and challenges. Some factors that everybody faces, and others that are specific to local communities. There's a lot of diversity throughout the different regions of Kentucky and different types of programming. So the aim of this project was to really dig in and understand what Kentucky's specific strengths are, where the challenges lie, and what the most effective interventions might be for improving these systems. So we're really looking for system level interventions that can be sustainable. And we know that the best solutions are always going to be community-led solutions. So that's where we started. So next slide looks at our research methods. You can go ahead and get all 3 bullets up there. Our first task was to generate this understanding. So we conducted interviews with 24 experts across Kentucky. From these informants, we learned about current programming, how the current landscape came to be. We talked a little bit about history. We were interested in lessons learned. So we heard from folks all across the sectors that serve early childhood. Hands workers, pediatricians, First Steps, the school districts, Help Me Grow. We talked to universities, specialists, the family resources and youth services centers that are located in each schools, and more. We wanted to understand the rhythm of their programming. How does developmental screening fit into their workflows? Does it fit into their workflows? How does it inform the services that they provide? What has worked well, and of course, where the biggest challenges are. And also, we were really interested in hearing people's visions for the future and what they think would help this system. Second, we conducted a survey of the Kentucky Regional Collaborative Network. And here we were looking for some additional details to get a feel for the local dynamics. These collaboratives, just like Amy was just saying, are all over the state and include all the different regions of Kentucky. So it really helps us kind of dive in and talk about regional issues. Families' needs are diverse and layered, and the Regional Collaborative Network is really kind of tuned into those. So we were invested in knowing how those dynamics play out. Then third, we gathered as much state level data and program level data as we could about current developmental screening numbers. Because, while we understand that numbers can't tell us everything, they can be really helpful. So this process gave us a pretty thorough picture of which programs are already invested in developmental screening, who their partners are, what the main funding streams have been, and how developmental screening kind of works into existing plans and priorities. And then the next slide, I'm going to have Dr. White talk a little bit about this beautiful patchwork quilt image here.
Well, I live a couple of blocks from here. I almost brought one of my mother's quilts with me. My mother got second place in the state for hand-pieced, hand-quilted. And when my mother puts a quilt together, there is a there's a fabric that's made, they're called fat quarters for any quilters out there. So you buy the fat quarters and they've got a fabric, they've got a pattern, they've got a color. You have the same fabric for every quilt square. You they're all cut precisely the same size, so they fit together precisely. You connect them the same way. My mother quilted 11 stitches to an inch. So just draw out an inch and then 11 dots. Imagine what quilting that would be. And so her work of art was just, and you know, she has beautiful, beautiful quilts. That's not what this survey and all this work has done. She does not have pieces of fabric exactly the same size, the same shape, the same texture, and they're not put together exactly, precisely the same way. What the pioneer women did is they wanted to keep warm. So they got all of their fabric and they laid it out on the floor and they took the different pieces and they sewed it together and they still had warmth. They still had a quilt. And if you can see, they didn't just sew them together. There's embroidery and there's pictures and there's stars and arrows and all kinds of things to make it pretty. The point was they wanted something that could work. So what Kate and her group have done is they collected all these pieces of fabric. Some of the programs are felt and some of them are linen. But you know, you sew them together, you put some batting back there, and you've got something that's going to keep you warm. So when she was talking to me and talking through what the group has done to this point is, we've got people all over the state, different shapes, different sizes, and they should be because they have different needs and they've approached that need in a different way. But this grant is going to allow us to sew them all together. And there'll be a little embroidery here and maybe a little gold thread and maybe sew a button on every once in a while for a little embellishment. But that's what the Stellar Group is going to do. And so that's why they're going the slide saying that now we've got a better understanding of what the professionals are doing across the state. We got local level screening. So now the plan that's going to be put together is how do we sew it together? So we've got the Kentucky Crazy Quilt early childhood screening, but that's going to give us that warmth in our children so they can make that developmental step.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Dr. White. Yeah, we did find such strength at the local level, screening practices, and a lot of diversity of different types of screening practices, different approaches to screening and different tracking methods. One of the images that I really like about this crazy quilt idea that Dr. White is speaking of is the idea that on the back piece of this quilt is one piece. So there's a unification that backs the diversity, right? And that unification layer is really kind of something that it seems like our key informants were really sort of yearning for. So what we found was low levels of cross-sector coordination when it comes to developmental screening specifically. And the thing is that developmental screening is one of those pieces, one of those activities that really shines a spotlight on the importance of cross-sector communication in early childhood services, because just, you know, like many things in early childhood, necessitate sort of the conceptual and professional intersections between healthcare, public health, education, childcare, all these different sectors. And in developmental screening is happening in every single one of those. So, for example, the Early Childhood Regional Collaborative Network has been one strategy that's been very effective in facilitating interconnections between experts and professionals in the early childhood realm. So by building those collaborations across sectors, the collaboratives have identified and addressed gaps in information distribution, service delivery, these kinds of things. So finding ways to kind of further institutionalize that kind of infrastructure to build those connections is important. Another piece is that screening has developed really around sort of this need to make referrals to Part C services for children with disabilities. And that's where we see a lot of the strongest screening practices. Just like Paula Goff was saying, this is really important. There's, you know, just finding the children who would really benefit from those services. That being said, Developmental screening is also a key part of facilitating family and caregiver engagement, education, monitoring for all children, even children who have no signs of delay and who hopefully will never have signs of delay, right? It's important for sort of understanding and monitoring those progress towards developmental milestones and getting parents involved in that process to encourage that developmental process. So national best practices really emphasize the importance of universal developmental screening programs, in addition to kind of more targeted child find efforts. So both are really important. On a national survey, only about 26% of children in Kentucky were reported to have received developmental screening over the past year. So that ranks Kentucky 44th in the nation on that measure of developmental screening. So there is some room for improvement here. But what's exciting is that developmental screening is a really high impact intervention, both for identifying children who are at risk for disabilities or at risk for delays, and then also increasing that parent engagement piece. So next slide. I wanted to look at just some of the bright spots, and I think we're running a little low on time. So I'm gonna kind of choose a few to focus on here that I think really stand out. And one is, like I mentioned, the Kentucky Regional Collaborative Networks have been really strong in terms of kind of building the frameworks for cross-sector collaboration. So that's been really cool to see. The training and local efforts, there's been a truly impressive amount of grassroots efforts. Smart professionals all across the state are noticing the need for trainings and greater implementation of developmental screening. And just like Paula was saying, high quality trainings are going to include how to have those difficult conversations. And we saw that especially when we talked to people from the early intervention program from First Steps. So really important work happening there. But all over, regional collaboratives are doing trainings, childcare aware, different organizations coming together and understanding the need for these trainings and making it happen. Again, sort of on the grassroots local level. Home visitation regularly screens a large percentage of the children they work with. Help Me Grow. Kentucky has 3 Help Me Grow sites that are all doing incredible work. They are actively reaching out to providers to help facilitate the screening process, either by actually sort of taking on the task of screening, scoring the screens, making referrals, doing the appropriate follow-ups themselves. Sometimes they're doing all of that work. Other times they're working with providers to give them access to online portals that automatically score the screens and then help providers do the work with the families themselves. One sort of bright spot that I wanted to pull out is the Help Me Grow affiliate in Louisville that is connected with Metro United Way, has an incredibly fruitful partnership with Play Cousins Collective. And Play Cousins Collective is a large collective of Black families that puts all sorts of kind of wraparound programming on for family members of all ages. And their mission is to really kind of build a village around children that serves the needs, strengthens family bonds, heals generational trauma, and insulates them from systemic oppression and racism. And so Metro United Way, has worked closely with Play Cousins engagement specialists who reach out into the community, integrate developmental screening into their programs, and then works with Metro United Way to track those screenings, follow up on regular intervals, make effective referrals. So this has been a really successful partnership that serves as a nice model for how to build trust and effective relationships with communities, especially around something like developmental screening, which, just like we were talking about earlier, can be a pretty sensitive subject when you're finding delays and having conversations with families like that. We've also seen a lot of activity in public libraries, just really brilliant kind of initiatives that people are seeing, okay, where are the kids that aren't getting reached? Well, they're going places in the community. The libraries is one of them. So that's been really interesting to see. A lot of utilization of standardized tools, which is fantastic. Many different tools also. So there's some interesting opportunities to potentially streamline that and sort of understand what different tools offer, right? The quality rating system, All Stars in childcare, integrates developmental screening into their points program. So that's also a bright spot. All right, so next slide are just a few opportunities for growth. I'm checking my little timer here. Many interviewees and survey participants express that even though providers have access to a great amount of helpful information about developmental health in general and screening in particular, there's still a lot of families who need this information and who would really benefit from it. So finding ways to increase public awareness of developmental health in general, just, you know, what are the milestones? Why are they important? How do we track them? You know, these kinds of things. And developmental screening in particular as an important piece of that larger developmental health promotion program. There's some really interesting opportunities there. Increasing access for all families. We heard a lot about the different types of challenges that families are facing. In addition to the challenges that providers face related to things like funding, staffing, and time to make developmental screening really happen. But for the families, we hear about transportation challenges, potential language barriers, limited awareness and understanding, you know, just getting families in and interested in completing developmental screens and going forward with those services. There's also a lot of hard to reach populations, for example, children who are just kind of outside of the care systems until they reach school. You know, Kentucky's talked a lot about early child or kindergarten readiness, right? But those 5 years before kindergarten are what gets kids ready for kindergarten. So if they're not already involved in systems of care, it's hard to reach them sometimes. So one of the things that came up in conversations with key informants is the need for care coordinators and connectors, folks who kind of sit in the system, but might not be attached particularly to any one program, and they help coordinate with families. There's national models of this, several different national models. Help Me Grow is one of the national models that sort of has a care coordination component and that already exists in Kentucky. So care coordinators can do that crucial follow-up work to make sure that connections are being made, and they can help with the appropriate sort of information sharing that needs to happen between providers of different sorts. Another piece that's important for that care coordination piece is this idea of a two-generation approach, which is sort of a national best practice. This idea that it's not only potentially the child that would benefit from specific services, but also the family, the parents. And so, and that relates to sort of the context in which development is happening, right? So care coordinators can have the capacity to sort of look at all of those factors and connect families to the services they need. And the last piece, enhanced cross-sector coordination. One of our informants noted that while there has been so much important work done in Kentucky, building coalitions and collaborations for professionals, getting these conversations started, that hasn't always translated to the unification of service delivery from the family perspective. It does so often, but in the case of developmental screening, there's sort of another sort of missing link that that we can add that I think would have a really strong impact. So especially given how quickly children grow and move through the different programs in early childhood, avoiding siloed approaches and building collaboration is just really key. One of the things, I'm running a long time, but one of the things I really wanted to emphasize here and that came up again and again and again in interviews with folks was the need for improved data sharing capacities. So a focus here on data systems, streamlining how we hold information about developmental screening. So there's actually been a few really notable efforts to make this happen, but they are facing challenges. So challenges related to staffing capacity, just the human capacity to make this happen, right? In addition, costs, regulations, even legal issues related to information and data sharing can make this a really complicated problem, right? A really complicated task. However, it's not insurmountable, and there's a lot to learn from how other states have approached this. So given that this was a refrain among the informants, I think there's a lot of really interesting conversations that can be had about that cross-sector coordination, and especially in relation to data sharing. So next slide just kind of introduces the next phase of our project, which is really to engage in develop an implementation plan. So just generate alignment among key stakeholders and existing plans. Look for, well, we have been looking for, so really talk about and unpack those system level interventions toward universal developmental screening. And so with that, we can create a plan for targeted, sustainable interventions that improve the infrastructure for children's healthy development in those first 3 to 5 years of life. So we've got a lot of great work ahead of us. And that's it. So if you have any questions, I'd love to kind of explore this with you.
Are there any questions? I know that was quite a bit of information, but thank you, Dr. White and Kay, for sharing our learning so far. And, you know, I'm leaving here with a couple things that I want to follow up on specifically, but I am intrigued by improved data practices reference that you made, Kate, and where it is that we might be able to learn from other states. What are some of the promising practices as we think about data sharing? I mean, you know, I've been in Kentucky my entire life and have done and been a part of a lot of work in Kentucky. And I used to really think this is an area where we were in the forward. And I guess what I'm wondering is, what are some of the practices from other states? If you have that information yet, if there's a state that we need to point to where we can learn more, what can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a huge topic. So there's lots of different models. And it just, you know, I think diving deeper into kind of which one would work best for Kentucky is key. But for example, there's been some interesting work happening out of Utah. Utah has a really effective early childhood integrated data system. They call theirs eKids. Some folks call those integrated systems eSIDS, but they use eKids. And so they started with the ASQ online. So ASQ is the Ages and Stages questionnaire, which is a really popular and effective developmental screening tool. So the Ages and Stages questionnaire, there's a social emotional piece to it. They have a second questionnaire that's a social emotional questionnaire. But the publishing company that created that questionnaire has an effective kind of online system for tracking the results of questionnaires. So they had really built out their Ages and Stages questionnaire online portal. But then they found that there was still a lot of risk for duplication. It wouldn't always flag when a child had been already inputted into the system. And so then what they did was take that system, which already was holding 15,000 screens a year. So we're already talking about a lot of screens every year are going into this system. So it was effective to a certain point, right? But then they took that and integrated it into their eKids system, their sort of general system, which includes programs from the Department of Health. It includes, I can't rattle them all off the top of my head, but I think from Head Start, maybe 6 or 7 different programs were already kind of inputting data into one system. And so they were able to, or at least sharing data through that system. So they were able to integrate developmental screening into that system. So again, that's a complicated process. There's a lot of pieces at play. The Help Me Grow organizations in Kentucky use 2 different data systems. There's one called the STAR system from out of California, and the Utah, actually they use a system that was created in Utah for the statewide Help Me Grow system. And those both have really effective ways to additionally track follow-up and referrals. So those are interesting pieces. But Yeah, there's also, you know, HIPAA compliance rules. All of these things are really important to consider when you're trying to kind of embark on a program like this. And these are sort of the challenges that have been faced by folks who have tried this already. But there's lots of good models. So I know that was sort of a disorganized answer to your question, but that'll be sort of a piece of our report that we'll talk about this a little bit.
Great, thank you so much. I do appreciate the response and developing and understanding a little bit more deeply to what's next. I think we have next on our agenda progress update that was supposed to be with Dr. Ellis.
And
Is she online? Okay, wonderful. Amanda, we're going to turn it over to you if you're ready.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And it's so nice to see so many familiar faces. When I had the opportunity back in the day before COVID to represent the Department of Ed on ECAC. And so thank you for letting me join online. I think I have some seasonal allergies, but I wanted to just be sure and not spread any germs. So I appreciate the time. So today I feel like I'm in a circle of folks that speak my language, and this is all about, I wrote down everything I heard today was about partnership, collaboration, communication, elevating information and opportunities, and increasing quality and care for our students or our children and their families. And so that is just really in the vein of what I'm going to talk about today and how that fits in with your advisory council in early childhood. So I'm currently positioned at the Council on Post-Secondary Education, but one of my main roles that really takes me outside of just being in that agency specifically is helping to coordinate the Commonwealth Education Continuum. And I just want to take a little brief moment to tell you what that is, because we're trying to elevate and communicate what we're doing. And so this is basically, if you were around in 2011, 2012, Kentucky had a P16 council, and they brought all the incredible folks to the table from all different sectors. I'm sure Dr. Cummins Smith was right at that table. She was in the midst of lots of leadership at the department at that time. And so there was some really good work and collaboration that took place, and there were lots of P16 councils going on. And after a couple of years and more changes to things, that kind of died away. Well, one of the people also, President Aaron Thompson, and he was just adamant that the key to really strengthening opportunities and access in Kentucky from early childhood all the way through workforce is collaboration. And so if we go to the next slide, basically Dr. Thompson had then challenged us to come together in Kentucky and recreate, instead of P16, P20 council. And so this quote that actually was just published a couple of weeks ago by the Education Strategy Group, who wrote a white paper about the renewed promise of P20 councils, said it beautifully. And Amy has seen this. She is a part of our continuum, our P20 council, and you can see this quote. I'll give you a moment to read it, but I'll pick out what I really like the most out of it. What I hope you picked up is where it starts in the middle about our realities as education leaders across the full education continuum must walk in stride to ensure students have the greatest ability to succeed from the earliest days of infancy, which really encompasses all the multitude of work you all have talked about today, and into the workforce, which you've also talked about today. Go to the next slide, please. So what the council or the continuum is, it was formed out of a moral imperative to strengthen the entire education pipeline from early childhood, from the beginning stages of things that are not formalized school, all the way to credentials, degrees, and into the workforce, to really that circle of life. And so at the time, we had Lieutenant Governor Coleman, who was also in the shared role as the Secretary of Workforce and Education Cabinet. Now it's the Labor and Education Cabinet. She and Dr. Thompson, President Thompson, and Commissioner Glass came together and said, we want to co-chair this together. And so they came together in 2 years ago, January 2021, and the governor really kicked this off with a resolution And there are 28 members that range from early childhood all the way through workforce, representing 28 different roles. So parents, students, K-12 different representatives, early childhood, workforce, post-secondary, legislators in the room together, looking at the entire pipeline in Kentucky. And what we said as a purpose was to seek to improve actions to ensure students can equitably earn the necessary degrees and credentials to enter the workforce successfully. That means we start early and we start strong. And I'm just so impressed and love the work you talked about today and all the intricate details of what you do for families, what you do for childcare workers and those who are seeking childcare, and just the quality and the efforts you're putting into this, the communities, is absolutely essential, as we all know. Next slide, please. So what this group chose to do is that they initially said we can't eat the whole elephant at once, which was, you know, an easy thing to do when I attack all the things. So we looked at the transition points and where we have some leaky pipes, or as Dr. Thompson calls potholes, and that we lose students, or we discourage families not intentionally, and it weakens the education journey and pathway and opportunities for students and our children. And so the first where we started was the transition from high school into post-secondary. And what we decided as a group, that we set norms of what we were going to do, but the last norm was the most important. And this came from the entire continuum saying, you know, we can't just be talking, we got to do stuff. And we must listen to the voices who have historically been disenfranchised in education in history. And that does not just mean race, ethnicity, gender, socioeconomic, it also means geographic. Don't assume what works for Northern Kentucky students that will work for far Western Kentucky, because our resources are different, our challenges are different. So ask us. And so what we did is we committed to that. So when we narrowed down on an area that we wanted to talk about, we started looking at data that you all have already talked about, the richness of our data. What do we already know? But what we didn't know was the lived experiences of others that contributed to that data. And so we formulated work groups out of that first area that focused on early post-secondary opportunities. We focused on successful transition into post-secondary. That does not mean always a 4-year institution or a 2-year. What is the post-secondary plan and how are students transitioning there, or were they? And we pulled the quantitative data, and then we went to all of the regions in the state and did focus groups and individual interviews of folks it would impact with those topic areas. And so what happens with those is that we take the feedback from the stakeholders and we take the quantitative data and put it together with some suggested recommendations, and a lot of times new learning around what we found out. And so specific examples to get to the early childhood part, because I know we're running close on time and you guys are probably very weary, is that, for example, one of ours is on early post-secondary opportunities, which deals with dual credit and AP and IB and that access. Folks were like, well, what kind of advising are students getting and who's actually accessing dual credit? And we have these scholarships, but you know, what is the percentage? What is the use of it? So we started to dig a little deeper and we found that not all students had access, that there was a varied offerings, and then there were even some local policies that were gatekeepers from keeping students out of taking advantage of those opportunities. So what yielded from that is we had recommendations about increasing access and increasing a more diverse population taking advantage of those dual credit classes. The General Assembly had removed the financial barrier of at least 2 classes, now 4 at the moment, plus CTE courses, but not everybody knew that they were eligible or worthy of taking those courses. So the work that the Continuum had really pushed on the agencies who work around dual credit is to communicate better. And then the question came up around advising. How are we advising students? How do parents know? And so what that yielded was action into, we got the recommendations at CPE and KDE and KIA, and we're like, what can we do together to do a better job of sharing the message and really increasing awareness around this, and not just awareness, but how do we increase enrollment? And so one of the things that we are getting ready to push forward next week, just as an example, is that we have, because of that push, we have revised our dual credit policy to also set an attainment goal. We know how many students are taking it, and we're starting to go into the districts and saying, did you know that this is this is what it looks like, and it does not match our student population, and how can we do better? What can we do to reach more students, and how can we share this message with parents? So it is what the continuum is not. It does not duplicate work. It does not take over anybody's work or claim to be experts by any means. What we do is we want to elevate when things are going well, and we want to share the word of did you know? Because I will tell you, we have lots of incredibly bright people at the table who know a lot, but sometimes they didn't know the rest of the story, or they didn't know the impact, positive or negative, to Kentuckians. It was all well intended, but how's it really going for folks who are boots on the ground, or actual students or families who are engaging in these things that we think are really good? So what we're doing is that as we continue the work around the pipeline piece of that post-secondary secondary into post-secondary, and moving into that and sustaining, more questions have been brought up, as they should, as, okay, well, what are our other pipeline pieces, those other transition points that are really important? So we started dabbling in that middle to high school, and realizing there's a lot of missing information there that we need to elevate, and some really good practices that go on in our state that ensure students are on track and have opportunity and access. We look at the elementary, and that hasn't even been broached yet. And as you all can imagine, the lieutenant governor is saying, I really want to elevate early childhood. Like, we have a transition point in that infancy up to age 5. And many of you talked today about kindergarten readiness. Dr. White, I know you did. What does that mean? What does that mean for us? And do folks really understand all the services that go into our families? Do they really understand the infrastructures within our state? Or do they think it's just a daycare or a childcare? Do they think it's just a preschool? But it's really an entire system, as you all talked today, and really with the efforts around collaboration. And so what we are doing is we're bringing some folks to the table going, let's learn about early childhood. That does not go without you all, or without the experts that are able to actually do the work and inform. This is starting to bring to light the importance and essential component of early childhood in our pipeline, not just for our children, but for our families as well. And so I was already writing down all your names and things of just things that you could share as we start to dig in and go, why is this an important piece of our pipeline? Did you know all these services all wrap around our early childhood work? And it doesn't start at age 3 or 4 or 5. It actually goes back to infancy. And actually, the quote I shared with you earlier actually struck a lot of conversation. Amy can speak to this in our continuum going, you say that it didn't say age 3 or 4. It actually said infancy. And what does that mean in Kentucky? And what goes on in Kentucky around those supports and services? So that's what we're going to be looking at as a continuum, not as a judgment at all, or any kind of way to tell you how to do your work. It's really to bring light to it and to communicate the services that are out there, to communicate how it fits into the grand scheme of things, and really to learn more and how we can help you communicate what you're doing. We did reach out to, of course, Amy and John with the PDG. I know how massive that is. And so we wanted to make sure that any of our efforts around just the questions we're asking is aligned to the PDG, because we know that there are goals and strategies. And so Amy, of course, has been incredibly helpful in being able to share the strategies, the goals, and the work of the ECAC, the work of the PDG team, the partners, and really just the complex work around that. And so we just wanted to say, thank you for doing this, and why, if you see there's work around that, or if we ask you to come talk to a work group, it is not to overlap or duplicate any work. It's really to learn, elevate, and collaborate in ways that we can help you get your message out and the work that you're doing. I think it's so incredibly important. And I don't think people realize how complex and detailed you get to ensure that there is quality care and continuous improvement in Kentucky. So I'll stop there to answer any questions that you may have for me. It's still very early, so I don't have all the exact objectives. We're in the process of creating that, but I am happy to answer anything that I can at this time.
Are there any questions for Dr. Ellis? And Amanda, what I'm hopeful for is that we continue to see you come back to this council. Amy and I were kind of chit-chatting on the side, and I think this is another example of work that's going on in and across the Commonwealth with the explicit intention of coordination and alignment, and ensuring that everyone is aware of the work that's underway. So I think we should be able to leave the door open for you to come and share with us at periodic times when that makes some sense. Maybe if that makes sense to you. Very good. Very good.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
If anyone has any additional questions for Dr. Ellis, if you want to send those to Megan or Amy, that would be great, and we can get those to Dr. Ellis. We do want to make sure that we have a little bit of time to hear from our best practices and our sites that have been here that we want to elevate. And Northside Early Childhood Center has a blended public preschool and Head Start program. And as you all may know, they were the first to be identified for family-friendly early care school. And that is to be celebrated. And this process takes quite a bit of energy and time to think through and provide evidence for. And I think it's worthy of an applause, if we might. They are truly the pace setters, and I'm really excited to hear, as I know my colleagues here on the advisory council are, from the team that's here today. So I'm going to turn it over to Emily Swindler. I think you're virtual.
Can you all hear us? Can you see us?
Yay!
Yay!
Your applause.
Yes, we heard your applause. We appreciate that. We're excited to be here today. Everything Kim and I were sitting here talking, everything that you all have talked about today is all about building relationships, collaboration, partnerships, communication, advocacy for early childhood. This is exactly what the Family Friendly Schools certification was for. And so what we want to talk a little bit today is about that process and how we kind of stumbled upon it, if you should say. We have I'm going to go with before of who we are. We are connected to Shelby County Public Schools. We're a public preschool that has, we service 3-year-olds with disabilities and 4-year-olds with disabilities or income. And so we've been on this journey of being a community resource for our community. That's all. For the last 5 years, we've said, how can we impact families and just be a community resource for our early childhood families? With that work, we know the most important thing is building family partnerships. And we know that the parents are the first teacher, and we have to empower them and teach them about K readiness, and have them teach us about what we need to do as well to partner together to be what's most successful for the child. And so before we did this certificate, we had already started building strands. And so when we think about strands, we have a born learning strand, which is just, strands we have 5 or 6 trainings throughout the year. That strand is all about the early childhood domains. And then we have another strand, which is that's what Kim works through, is a loving literacy strand. And it's like, how do we build literacy throughout the year? We also have EL groups that meet monthly, that our family resource coordinator, Maria Thomas, is not here, but she does a fabulous job with that. And we also have an All Pro Dads training or meetings that our dads are leading that work, and they're building together social emotional learning to help support their little ones in our community and our school community. So we were already in that work. That was our background. And then from there, we have 30, 60, 90 meetings that our district people, our district team is a part of, and family engagement has been a big part of that. We started with the CASEL work and the rubrics with that, with collaborative partners. And so from that work, Dr. Sugg, our superintendent, had been to a training and said, you all have got to do this. This is a great way to highlight your work and to just build more understanding or reflect on, validate what we're doing or tweak what we need to tweak. So we went through that process. I'm going to have Kim talk a little bit about that process.
So, yeah, so we were already doing most of the things. At first, when she asked us to do it, we thought, oh, we're going to have to do all this stuff. When we looked, we were already doing all the things. We just had to put it in the boxes to meet all the requirements. You know, how were we collaborating with parents, and you know, how are they helping us tell us what they need to know? So we were already doing all these things. We just had to kind of format it and get it all turned in. So we truly, I mean, I'm not fluffing when I say that. We were already doing these things. You know, as a classroom teacher, I already knew if you don't have the parents on board with you, it's going to be tough to get the kids where they need to be. So Miss Swindler right here has just been phenomenal on making sure we get parents in the building. They're in the building with us. Of course, we couldn't do that during COVID, but we did drive-through events. We did whatever we could to get resources to those families, to teach families how to work with their kids. So for instance, the literacy nights that we do, the parents come in with the children. We teach them a skill that they can do, how to do a picture walk. And then we practice it right there. The parent is sitting right there beside the child. We give them a book and they're practicing the skill so that they can take it home and carry it over. So we teach them all the different things about literacy that they might want to know. We ask them for their feedback. What do you want us to teach you? What do you feel like you need to know to help your child succeed? And we take that feedback, and then, you know, it guides us on what we're going to teach the next time.
And then I think, like what Kim had said before, we had a lot of things in place, but that digital playbook and how it's connected was so validating for us when you go through the family, when you go through the process. I felt like that the digital playbook, we would go, wonder what that means. And you could go right to it. And there were examples, there's things that we pulled out of that to be able to use. The application process of what was given to us, we really had to kind of think through, like, oh, well, we have this, and you're just putting in, and really, when you all talked about alignment, it is about alignment. And so we just really feel validated and comfortable, and we've really grown in this process as a school, in a community for this. So we're excited to be able to share, and we were kind of surprised that we were the first. So we had a big celebration with that. Do you have any questions for us?
Are there any questions? I know we are tight on time, but I want to say again, on behalf of the council, just congratulations and your hard work. We think that it's just putting all the packaging together, but it's actually the impact that you're having on a day-to-day with the children and the families with whom you are serving and working alongside to really transform what's happening for them. And that is multi-generational impact. And I think this is just amazing that we have the opportunity to elevate you, elevate your practices, elevate the hard work that's going on in Shelby County. So congratulations again.
Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah, Rita.
I just want to know where we can find information about the strands that they described. Congratulations, Emily, so proud of you. So
Is that Rena?
Yeah.
Oh, hey, Rena, how are you?
Great. Yeah, so where can we find information about their work?
Well, what we did is we looked at, like, what do we need? Like, for example, we looked at literacy. And so the first thing would be about using context clues, using picture walks. And then we connected, like, fine motor to literacy. Then we connected gross motor to literacy. Like, we've been trying to integrate things. And the whole purpose is we're training people, we're training families, but we're all in it together. We're learning and doing it together. And we used our reading recovery teachers from K and used some research based from there. And we've used community partners. We have Megan from the library. I mean, we're pulling everybody in and just pulling best practices around literacy. And we came up with that with ourselves, really.
So Emily, is that on your website? Are there places there that we can learn more, or either?
Yes.
Okay, super.
Can I jump in?
Sure.
On the self-assessment component of what they've done, there are strands for different family engagement activities and things that you need to embed. So that's part of the Richard work. So if you go to the website where the early childhood pieces are, that's where that is.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to add just a couple things. Again, just congratulations and thank the team at Northside, and we're really happy to make a connection offline. And just wanted to say that for the folks who don't know, this piece of the work is connecting work from years and years ago, at what was it called, a missing piece of the proficiency puzzle. And when our friends at Pritchard came to us and asked, would we partner with them? There was not a Bird5 piece. And so we partnered with them to develop this Bird5 piece. And I want to recognize Lynn Baker, who really led the effort to do this. And so, Lynn, if it hadn't been for Lynn, I don't know that this piece would be here, and especially in the form that it is.
Yeah.
So, we'd love to really help others, like Northside, utilize these tips and tools, because it's really incredible. So congratulations, and really thanks to Lynn.
Yes, thank you, Lynn. Excellent. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes oftentimes, and I'm so thankful, Amy, that you and your leadership, you elevate and recognize that, as it does take a team effort to accomplish all of this work. So thank you all. All right, so I just want to say thank you to the rest of the council members, and your ongoing leadership and commitment to this work is obviously having an impact across the Commonwealth. And doing this together, we can ensure that we have different outcomes and a different future for young people and their families. So thank you for being here. And is there a motion to adjourn? Dr. White, is there a second? Thank you. Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you. See you on June.